First up, I told them what's coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Escambia County Redevelopment Agency regular meeting June 5th, 2025, 9:01 a.m. Ernie Lee McGahey, Government Building, first floor. Please turn your cell phone to vibrate, silence, or the off setting. The Board of County Commissioners allows any person to speak regarding an item on the agenda. The speaker is limited to 2 minutes unless otherwise determined by the chairman to allow for sufficient time for all speakers. Was there proof of publication?
The CRA meeting was published in the Pensacola News Journal on May 22nd, 2025.
Thank you. Are there any speakers for public forum?
No speakers.
Thank you. Let's go right into the technical and public service consent agenda.
Two for your approval. First one, recommendation concerning Community Redevelopment Agency Annual Financial Report Fiscal Year 2023-2024, and recommendation concerning Community Redevelopment meeting minutes May 1st, 2025.
Chair, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move both items on the technical public
So we have a
service
motion.
consent.
Second, please vote. That passes unanimous. Thank you so much. Budget and finance consent agenda, please.
We have three for your approval. First one is recommendation concerning residential improvement grant program funding and lien agreements. Second one is recommendation concerning cancellation of residential rehab grant program liens. And the third one is recommendation concerning rescinding the residential improvement grant program funding and lien agreements for property located at 1603 Cedrus Lane.
Mr. Chairman, I move the entire budget and finance.
Thank you. I have a motion. I have a second. Please vote. That passed unanimous. Excuse me. Director, how much more money do we have in the roof program? I remember at the last CRA we said we didn't have any backlog. We actually had no waiting list, correct?
No waiting list. Total for our grants, we still have total for $1,236,898.
So basically, anybody in Escambia County that lives in the county that wants a roof that is eligible gets a roof.
Yes, we've got plenty of money.
Okay, well, that's good news.
Okay.
Go ahead and do we move all three of those? See, did we move all three of those? Is there anything else for discussion? If there's nothing else for the good of the order, the CRA stands adjourned. In the hands of you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner May. I was told, Erica, you want to have our staff help you upload the draft before we move forward?
Yes, sir.
Is Peter, or can Peter help, Wes? Is Peter?
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Is this strictly a COW, and we're not going to look at any agenda items for tonight?
It wasn't on there, but you know what? We can actually, well, let me just start the meeting. We'll have a call to order. Please turn off.
I'm good with it. I'm just asking. You know, if that's not your intent, that's fine.
It's scheduled for 9. I have no problem if there's an exception if you want to bring something up.
Okay. I mean, there's just some items that I would want to hold for tonight, but we can do that, you know, tonight before we start.
Okay. I don't mind doing it this morning. We normally do it, but I was just deferring for the.
No, that's
cow.
fine. I mean, we have the mayor here. I'd just rather hear from the mayor and be respectful of his time, so we can just go straight into COW.
Okay. Can we help Erica with her jump drive, and then we'll start with the pledge, Steve, after she gets set up.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. We got the mayor and the mayor-elect. Alex, we're glad you're here.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Mayor Reeves, for being here. I don't see any other elected officials in the audience, but thank you. Look forward to the presentation this morning.
So while she's preparing, is there any presentation from our staff? I know that, you know, it was kind of a directive to staff to communicate with city staff to answer any questions. Or is there any presentation from our staff or just a presentation from the city?
I don't believe we have a presentation. I think the city asked, well, I know the questions I submitted. I don't know what the other commissioners submitted, but I believe they were all answered. So I think we'll get into that dialogue here shortly.
So where are those answers? I mean, because I wouldn't know what you submitted or what anybody else submitted.
They're in the PowerPoint.
They're in the
and,
PowerPoint?
They'll come up.
Okay.
And I know the ones I had, I don't know who else asked questions, but I'm sure they know their questions. Do you have a response, Madam Attorney?
There were 2 commissioners who submitted questions. That was District 2 and District 4. Those questions were all submitted to the city prior to close of business last Friday, and I believe that either verbally or through the PowerPoint, they intend to address those.
Thank you, Madam Counsel.
Okay, since they got the PowerPoint up, I'd like to officially go through the normal protocol. Commissioner Berry, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Has the meeting been properly advertised?
Mr. Chairman, this meeting was advertised in the Pensacola News Journal on May 30th, 2025, in the board's weekly meeting schedule.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, today's a big day. We have VIPs here. We normally do this as the committee of the whole. I normally don't bring this out, but since the mayor's here, I'll ring the cowbell for you. We only do that on special occasions, so you should be very happy with that. But I look forward to a healthy discussion on the way forward with the Baptist Demolition Project and the board discussion on the way ahead. And so I guess at this point, we'll allow you guys to present, and then we'll move forward.
Mr. Chairman,
May?
before the mayor comes, I want to thank the mayor. This is a significant project in my district. It's a significant project in our community. It's quite frankly a significant project in the African-American community. So, Mr. Ray, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the conversations this past week on how we can hopefully get to a win for everyone.
Thank you.
Yep. Good morning, Board Chair Kohler, Commissioners. Again, thank you. Thank you to your staff for helping us. I did promise you guys when I was here last time, we certainly know you got a big, long day ahead of you, and we certainly can relate to that in city government as well, with long meetings and trying to get a lot done. So we're going to try to be as concise as possible while still trying to meet the needs of answering any questions that you have submitted to us, and I'll introduce the team that we've got here in a second so you know who's available to answer as technical questions as you'd like. But again, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and for us to answer your questions as partners in a project, and we've been looking forward to this chance to discuss. I think this is a community meeting because this is a community project. This is not a city project or a county project. This is a community project. And the city and county's involvement in this campus isn't because of a legal requirement. It's because of helping this neighborhood, this city, and this county thrive is part of building the quality of life that we need in this neighborhood, in this city, and in this county. So the action, I think, or the lack of action on this campus in total will impact the hundreds of city residents and county residents in this neighborhood for generations to come. So this is about partnership, and I believe it's about accomplishing something beyond what any one group could do, whether it's just the county, just the city, just Baptist, just the state of Florida. And so I'm really proud of the progress that we've been able to make so far, and I do feel like we're on the precipice of being able to do something generationally impactful here. Again, I promise to be concise. You have posed questions to us the last 45 or 60 days, which you'll hear from us, and we appreciate those questions. You'll hear our technical experts. Erica will come up in a second, and we'll try to tackle as many of those as possible. And of course, feel free to chime in with anything else. I do want to give a quick intro of who is representing us here. We have City Administrator Tim Kinsella, Economic Development Director Erica Gran-Cagnola, who you will hear from after me. We have our City Attorney Adam Cobb here. And when we took this project on, you guys may recall, we wanted to invest our time and money ensuring that we were doing this right. This is a big project. This is not the type of expertise that a city government or a county government may have just sitting internally in the building. So we hired Geosyntec, and we have Mr. Robert Bruce here, who's a senior principal with Geosyntec. And he leads a team hired by the city that has a combined 78 years of demolition and deconstruction experience, both in industrial and in commercial. And since you may not know him, just a quick bio. He's a registered professional engineer, geotechnical engineer, an associate fellow with the Institute of Chemical Engineers. And he himself has 38 years of experience in deconstruction and demolition, planning, feasibility studies, investigation and technical studies, litigation and claim support, preparation and implementation of work plans for a variety of industrial commercial projects, environmental projects, and civil engineering structures throughout the U.S., Canada, South America, and Asia. So we appreciate him flying in to, again, be able to, as technical as you'd like. I will not attempt to answer those. I will let the obvious technical expert be able to answer anything that you may have. We can go to the next slide. You guys are, I know, pretty well aware. There's been public, or am I emceeing here too? There we go. You guys are aware, of course, of this campus, 51-acre property, 13 acres. It's been well documented, is going to the Paces Group, and the proceeds of that sale from Paces to Baptist is part of the funding stack that's already in place. Those 13 acres will be about 100 senior units and 100 family units that are going into this project. And those are ones that clearly will take place much faster than the larger scale development that will happen here with all of the extra steps that we have left to go. So we're talking about a 38-acre donation to the city, and I'll talk about these bullet points in greater detail: mixed income housing, education, workforce, and commercial and retail. We have lots of conversation to be had with our community, with the neighborhood, about what needs to take place here, things like healthcare. But those are all part of what the ongoing process when we can get by this largest hurdle, which is getting the demolition done. Community impact. So I know I sent a letter to the county on January 8th of 2024 outlining this request, and also talking about some of those community benefits that I think are important to this neighborhood, and things that certainly the city would commit to. I know Commissioner May and I had conversations about, again, making sure that we don't just have new things coming in, that the neighborhood thrives and perseveres as is. So as we continued to narrate that transformation, we didn't want to just kind of talk about an idea. You know, you guys, as elected officials, we can talk about an idea lots of times. There's no replacing seeing it with your own eyes. And so on March 1st of 2024, the city rented a bus, and we loaded up Commissioner May. I know Clara was there. We had folks, both government, non-government. We had preachers. We had Career Source, about, I want to say, I'm going off memory, 45, 50 people. We bussed over to New Orleans for the day to see Bayou District Foundation, which is built on the purpose-built community model. And mixed income housing, education are really the two big keys. And I thought that really resonated with folks in our community to be able to see what right looks like and what Baptist could potentially be. So interestingly enough, Bayou District's about 50 acres, and it's been that project has been benchmarked by about 100 cities and countries already. It's been in place for about 15 years. Bayou District lowered crime by 99% in their neighborhood and actually extended lives. The zip code that Bayou District Foundation, when it was the housing project pre-Katrina, the average lifespan was 55 years old. The zip code next door was 70. 15 years later, their average life expectancy is 70. So we talk about housing and we talk about quality of life and economic opportunity, but we're literally talking about the ability to extend lives. And that was really amazing to see. And as you guys are aware, I'll bring Eric up in a second, there is significant cost of the demolition of this property that plays an important role both geographically and historically, both within and outside city limit lines. But as we know, what happens on this campus in the years to come and the consequence if nothing does will have great consequences to the surrounding community and our region. And that's what I wrote to you guys back in January 2024. I provided that letter again today. And every bit of what I've said in January of 24 and what I committed to as partners to preserve this community and what our partners committed to hold true today. We just need your support, and I think your support is vital, not just on the financial side, but I think to send the message to our community and to our region that we can work together for the greater good and to do something beyond what any individual government can do. So I certainly appreciate the time today on a busy day for you guys, and I'll allow Erica to come up and answer some of the questions that you provided us. So again, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, great picture, but Clara was not camera ready. She's hoping that she's been exercising that you would use the new improved picture next time that you put Clara in there.
We got AI or something.
Yeah, AI, yeah. I mean, you know, I didn't sign, you know.
Mr. Mayor, I would just argue Clara looks much better than Commissioner May in this photo, but
Well, that's why I didn't sign that little permission slip to use my picture. And I did not ride the bus, so I mean, I don't want another ethics charge. I drove myself.
I think Clara looks great in that picture, and I love the picture because it shows the different agencies and entities that were invited on that trip. My name is Erica Grancagnolo. I'm the Economic Development Director for the city. I know I've had the opportunity to sit down with some of you, along with the mayor, to talk about this project, but I want you to know that I'm always available. Wes knows how to contact me, so if you have any questions outside of this meeting or moving forward at any point in this process, please just reach out to me. I'd love to share the details of this project with you. It's been a huge part of my professional life for the last 2 years, and it's something that has become very important to me. When Baptist first approached the city in 2023 with the offer to partner on the demo and redevelopment of this site, it was obvious that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something transformational for the community. But every effort was made from day one to ensure that the appropriate due diligence was done to protect the city, the community, and the county. The last thing we wanted to do was move forward blindly and just hope that a demolition contractor would do a thorough job for us. A lot can go wrong with demolition, especially demolition of this size and with this level of hazardous materials. I believe that your staff has had the opportunity to review some of the proposals and responses that were received during the procurement of this project. And if they did review those responses, then they would have seen that during the safety review in the earlier part of our RFP, we had some firms who had to discuss deaths on the construction site. Demolition is very dangerous. When you think about just the logistics of how you pull apart a building, it's an incredibly dangerous endeavor. And so we realized pretty early on that going with the lowest bidder was not the approach that we would take with this project. And our approach is outlined on this slide. We wanted, first and foremost, to ensure no big environmental surprises. One of the biggest fears right from the start was that we were getting ourselves into an unknown environmental situation. And as I'm sure you're all aware, sometimes those situations can result in years of remediation. So we wanted to do a thorough job making sure we weren't obligating ourselves to something overwhelming in that sense. And we wanted to make sure that we were being responsible to the taxpayers by not getting in over our heads. In order to do that, we had to determine the actual hazardous materials and quantities on site, and so we took, the better part of a year to really do that. And of course, the Geosyntec team, represented by Robert, led the charge in that respect. And we needed to determine the actual cost of the remediation. Knocking a building down is actually not that expensive. It's the remediation for the asbestos and the lead and the other hazardous materials that adds the significant cost to a project like this. And so we wanted to, this morning, Robert told me, Erica, you can never ensure there are no budgetary surprises, but we wanted to do our best to limit any potential surprises with the project. You're going to see a lot of pictures of the Geosyntec team throughout this presentation, and this was a fun day for me. This was the initial walkthrough that Geosyntec did when we brought them onto the project, and I feel bad because Clara's not the only one who's not going to like her pictures up today. I'm not sure if you can tell that these 3 individuals are completely soaked through with sweat. It was a very hot and dirty job to do that initial walkthrough and assessment of the Baptist facility. So this was in July of 2024, so this was about a year ago. And we needed to make sure that, first and foremost, that we understood the scope of the project. So we needed to know what we were dealing with. So the city worked with Baptist on an access agreement that would allow us access over the course of the next several months to assess the structure and to refine the scope of the project. There were 2 reasons for this. First, we needed to make sure that we would follow all appropriate federal, state, and local regs for any remediation required. And then secondly, this was the only way to get the true sense of the project scope and cost. This slide is a little bit busy, but what you're looking at are some of the items that we added to a list for Baptist that they needed to handle before the demolition RFPs went out. Interestingly enough, furniture left behind in the building apparently doesn't add significant cost to a demo budget, but you can see the TV up in the top there. There were, hundreds of TVs left behind. If you think about it, in a hospital, every hospital bed has a TV. Well, interestingly enough, TVs can't just be dumped in the landfill. They have to be dealt with separately. So we made sure that Baptist removed all of those items that a demo contractor would have charged us additional money for. So I give that to you as an example of, again, the thoughtfulness that's gone into this process to make sure that we have a budget that doesn't get impacted by future change orders or unexpected events. This is a chart of what I have always considered a 3-phase approach to this project. I get, I think, more questions related to the redevelopment side than the demolition side of this, but I can tell you that as a staff person for the city, I've been consumed with the due diligence and the demolition side. So I want you all to see this so you can see that the redevelopment piece of this is really just getting started. Over the course of the last 18 months, as the mayor discussed the visit to the Bayou District Foundation, the mayor and I and a great community partner also took a trip to Orlando to visit another purpose-built community. We've had conversations with purpose-built themselves related to their holistic approach to a healthy community. So we've, I think, always approached this project from that sense of not just building housing, but rebuilding a community with all of the elements that are necessary for that. There's not a plan yet for that, because what we realized through those conversations with these community leaders who have done something great and been successful is that we, the city, do not have the expertise to do that. So we're looking to bring on a redevelopment advisor, and we are looking to make sure that this is someone who has successfully already done this, so that someone who understands what it takes to have a great community outreach program, because that will 100% be a part of this. And the mayor has tasked me with making sure that we get that community outreach started before the demolition happens. So I need to move quickly on that, and I certainly will. We recognize the importance of that. So we need community outreach, public input, and we need someone who understands all the vast components to what redevelopment is going to look like. Someone who understands which aspects of the redevelopment should be approached with grant funding, which should be approached through donor funding. And throughout, as you start to look at different purpose-built communities, you see that there's different approaches to that. For example, in Orlando being a bigger city with some larger companies, They've been very successful on the donor side of things with their redevelopment. So we need someone to come in with that expertise and guide us along with community input, guidance from the city, input and guidance from the county, and lead us in the right direction and set us up for success on the redevelopment side. And also, I'm going to move backwards to the top of the slide. I'm just going to walk you through the due diligence process. Initially, we, of course, executed the access agreement. We had our walkthrough with Geosyntec. A full phase 1 and phase 2 was completed for the site, our Alta survey, and then we also, I don't have a bullet for it up there, but we also completed a second hazardous materials survey, which was a very important piece of this project. Baptist had provided us with one that they had done, but since theirs was done while the hospital was still in operation, there were some holes to that, so we conducted our own hazardous materials survey. And we've invested over $400,000 under that due diligence umbrella, $400,000 to date. And then we have our procurement process, which I'm going to get into a little bit more detail moving forward. But we had a two-step procurement process that included an RFP, a shortlisting, and then an RFQ. So as I mentioned, the procurement was a multi-phased approach, and pardon me, I'm going to flip to my notes here and make sure I don't miss anything. The RFQ, we initially, first in our heads was we wanted to make sure that we were only dealing with and talking to demolition contractors that could handle demolition on this large scale. So we started with an RFQ, so we, with a focus on demolition companies. We focused on safety record, we focused on recent experience with a large scale demolition that included remediation component in a sensitive area. And what I mean by in a sensitive area is just the proximity of the neighborhood. And again, I'm going to refer back to some of these conversations that the mayor and I have had with some of you on the dais here. It was mentioned that we wanted to make sure that the children in the neighborhood weren't breathing asbestos clouds of dust. Yes, that is very important to us. That is, absolutely something that we want to ensure, would never even come close to happening. So, we've realized that protecting the neighborhood and making sure that our demolition contractor provided the least impact possible to the neighborhood was of paramount importance. So that's how we approached the RFQ. We issued that in October of last year. We received 18 responses, which for any of you, I'm sure you will agree that was a pretty large response to an RFP. We shortlisted 6 firms. Those 6 firms were invited to submit an RFP. And the RFP was where we asked the firms to really get into the details of how they would approach this project, which buildings would be demolished first, where would their staging area be, what would their transportation routes be to the landfills or the sites where the asbestos materials would be brought. We really got into the weeds. Would they plan to crush the concrete on site, or would the concrete be hauled off? And then another component to this project that became evident as we moved through this process was these firms approached site readiness for redevelopment in different ways. And so when we start to talk about the cost estimates, you have to keep in mind that sometimes you get what you pay for. An example of that would be that some of the firms offered to have compaction testing and to make sure that the soil was ready to be redeveloped, and some didn't. So, and I'm actually going to step away. I brought a prop to show you. Thank you, Mayor. I brought one of the responses. I just wanted you guys to see how thick it is. This is a very, very detailed project. There's a lot to it. I'm going to, again, just reference, this isn't the kind of project that you ask for a low bid on. Projects that you typically do requests for bids are things like street paving, things that aren't complex in this way and potentially hazardous or life-threatening if done wrong. So we have spent a good deal of time through this procurement process. We also had 2 full days that the shortlisted firms were allowed to walk through and access the hospital buildings. And they took full advantage of this. They were able to bring in their subs, they were able to bring in their environmental specialists, and to the extent possible, some of them were even, doing as much, testing as they could on site. So here are the questions that I received via email over the last couple of weeks, and I'm just going to jump right in. Why didn't the city take the lowest bid? I think I've kind of talked through that a little bit, but there was also a really one unknown in this project, and that's whether or not, or the degree of asbestos that is potentially in the basement wall of the main hospital. The hazardous materials survey was not able to determine that without actually starting the demolition of the building. So with as much due diligence as we did, and to the point of Robert Bruce, our consultant with Geosyntec, we can do as much effort as we can on the front end and as much due diligence to mitigate any unknowns, but until you start actually tearing things apart, there's always going to be some level of unknown. So in this case, the big unknown that came through to us in our oral presentation section of the RFP was how the different firms approached the unknown of asbestos in the basement wall in the main hospital. What y'all refer to as the lowest bid, they actually did not include any remediation for the basement wall in their cost estimate. And during the oral presentation phase, they stated, and they were very upfront with us. So this slide is, the purpose of this slide is to answer your question, but is in no way to show that this demo contractor did anything wrong. We at the city, we appreciate all of these contractors that decide to bid on our projects. So this is just, in order to provide information to you all as to why you see some variation in the cost proposals that we received. So in the oral presentation phase of this of the procurement, the lowest bidder stated that they did not provide any budget for the basement wall, for the unknown of the basement wall, but that if there were asbestos there, that they would charge us an hourly rate to mitigate that, and their estimate was that that could be up to $1 million in cost. But fundamentally, the city prioritized safety, community impacts, and the quality of work over low cost. The lowest bid ranked third overall in the selection committee's evaluation of the approach to the project, which included our assessment of the firm's ability to handle the hazardous mitigation, their approach to community outreach efforts, and site readiness for redevelopment. Something else that stood out was that the lowest bidder had struggled to identify local subs, particularly women and minority business owners. And again, they were open with us about that, but it was somewhat of a red flag to the selection committee. Next question, how much is the city contributing that is not CRA dollars? So as y'all are aware, and I'm gonna get to a slide with a little bit more detail with the demolition budget, the city has contributed, or plans to contribute our $7 million legislative appropriation to the demolition of the main campus area, our $5 million CDBG grant for the structures that are south of Moreno Street. And for those of you that the mayor and I have met with, I hope I've made clear that the CDBG grant is federal dollars, and so it's always a good idea to keep the federal dollars from mingling with the rest of the project, because there are additional requirements that can sometimes add to the cost of the project. So we, again, made that strategic decision early on to deal with the structure south of Moreno Street separately and apply the CDBG grant dollars toward those properties. There's also a requirement for the CDBG grant that be redeveloped. The redevelopment of the areas touched by the CDBG dollars cannot be residential. So they can be commercial, so we can look at bringing in a grocer, retailer, restaurants, cafes. We can use that area for parks. We could use that area for any type of community wellness efforts, but it can't be residential. So again, a strategic decision made to keep that geographically separate from the rest of the project. And then we have $1 million allocated from CRA, and $400,000 of that we've already invested in the due diligence process. But this isn't the biggest piece of the project. The most expensive part of this project is going to be the redevelopment. And we don't know the cost of the redevelopment advisor that I mentioned that we are looking to bring on to help guide us through this process. But that will be an expense that the city will have to take on immediately, and will most likely continue to pay over the next several years. And then there's just the infrastructure for the redevelopment, the sidewalks, utilities, lighting, everything that it takes to put this community back together. So those are the big costs. When you look at this project as a whole over the next few years, the cost of the demolition, while it seems significant right now, and it is significant, it's just a small piece of the puzzle. I hope y'all can read this. These are the numbers. So how much does the city actually need to cover the difference between the bids? I'll walk you through this slide. Top left, we have the demo project budget. As I mentioned, we have the grant funding that the city is bringing to this. We have the $3 million that Baptist Hospital is bringing. I have in there a $2 million contribution from Escambia County. We have the $2.9 million proceeds from the PACES sale, and then we have the $1 million from CRA. So we get to a grand total of $15.9 million for this demo project. I tacked on the $5 million for the CDBG grant there, because again, that's just, we're gonna just handle that on our own with our CDBG grant for all those properties south of Moreno Street. In the middle table, we have the additional costs related to the demo, and so that includes the due diligence that we've spent already, a contingency, and an owner's rep fees. The mayor and I have talked through this with some of your staff, but just to make sure that everyone understands, with a project this complex, you absolutely have to have an owner's rep, and specifically the city will be liable for every truckload of debris that leaves that site. We'll be legally liable to make sure that it's dealt with appropriately. So one of the most important functions of that owner's rep is that the owner's rep will actually be on site through all hours of construction. So they will be making sure that the demolition contractor does what they says. They will be making sure that all of the federally required remediation steps for asbestos are being adhered to. But also they'll be signing every single load of debris that leaves that site to ensure that it's being dealt with appropriately. So these are things that are really just legal obligations that the city must do. So we have our owner's rep fees, our due diligence, and our contingency for the total what we call other costs related to this project. And then finally on the right-hand side, you see the comparison of the estimates from the three firms. North Star is the firm that you are familiar with, that the city is moving forward with contract negotiation, and you see the total numbers there. You might notice that the total you're looking at there is actually more than 15.9. So again, those additional dollars the city will have to find a way to absorb. And then next you see Independence, which is the, as you all would refer to as the lowest bidder. So we do have their estimate there. And then I added $1 million to that estimate, and I suggest in that slide that we should anticipate a grand total of $14.6 million for that firm, because of the fact that they did not include in their budget any dollars for remediation of the potential asbestos in the basement wall of the main hospital. And then last firm you see is Renasant, and so they were Renasant ranked last out of the firms for the selection committee, and additionally their proposal included concrete crushing on site. So yes, their estimate is lower than North Star's estimate, but it was but they did not score well. Forgive me for my gif here, but would the city allow other representatives to participate in a bid selection process in the future? Of course, absolutely. Like I said, reach out to me anytime. Wes knows how to get a hold of me. I did not put my contact information in the slide, but of course I can give you my cell phone. You can text me. Please participate. Clara Long and I met recently, and we had, I think I actually talked her ear off, just trying to fill her in on everything we've been working on, but it was a great opportunity, and we should collaborate more often. So we both agreed that we would continue to do so, and I look forward to that level of collaboration. It looks like we've lost our connection here. I don't know if that means I've gone too long, but I think I only have 2 slides. Okay, almost done. I just want to make sure that, I am giving you all of the answers that you need. Next question, why doesn't the city use all available Westside TIF funds to pay for the demolition? Our Westside TIF funds for this year are fully allocated, and you can see what they're allocated to right there, from debt service to our residential property improvement program. But additionally, you'll notice that some of the funds are obligated for grant matches, and some of those grants are related to community redevelopment projects in this vicinity, in the West Side District, in the vicinity of the Baptist redevelopment. So, they're really, we're looking at this holistic approach to that area. And I like to say in the next 5 years, I think when you visit Baptist and Cervantes Street, this whole area should look a lot different, because of the investment that we're making, not just with the grant dollars, but just with our focus and our staff time. But fundamentally, we expect to use a good portion of future year West Side TIF funds to pay for the redevelopment. So we're not hoarding that money away. We are fully expecting to invest it moving forward on the redevelopment side of this project. And I'm finally to the end. I will, of course, answer any questions y'all have. And of course, we have representatives from Baptist and the mayor here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the brief. Board, is there any more comments from you, Mayor, or anyone? Okay. Baptist, do you want to make a comment or anything before we ask questions? Do you have anything you would like to enter? Casey, I guess you're the only one here. You don't have to yet, but I'm sure you're going to have some questions, so.
I'm fully anticipating questions from the Baptist end of things as well, but do just want to publicly thank the mayor and his staff. They've been great partners in envisioning what this redevelopment could look like, and appreciate the county considering coming along as a partner in this.
Thank you, Casey. All right, board, I think at that point, we should ask some questions. Commissioner Hoffberg, do you have the first question?
I did. I just had a clarifying question on the first slide. DC, or Mayor Reeves, you mentioned that the PACES group would be putting in senior living and then multifamily housing. You gave the numbers on those. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, we can get you to the unit, but it's in the ballpark of you have the numbers? Okay, yeah. There are about 100 of them.
Okay. And is that going to be affordable housing as well, or will that be market rate?
It's going to be 214 units total. The senior building specifically is going to be for low-income seniors, and the multifamily is going to be a sliding scale based on income, but targeted towards affordability.
Okay,
Casey,
wonderful. Thank you.
I don't know if you know the answer, Mayor, maybe you do, because I have a follow-up question to that. Do we have an estimated tax revenue that will come in after that's developed that will go into the CRA for those units?
I do not know the answer to that.
Because they'll be substantial, I imagine, and they'll go directly in that CRA, which, do you know that, Mayor?
Those specific projects, no, we don't have an estimate of that, but I do want to be clear, because there's been different theories. I went and checked myself, drinking coffee this morning. The CRA does not go up to the city limit line, so if you talk about just within the, where the actual towers and hospital are located, but across the street, across Avery Street is not in the CRA. So I just want to be clear, when we say demolition or redevelopment, that changes the definition of what is or isn't in the CRA.
I think it's split between our CRA and the city CRA, so it's
yeah, it's interesting. I think there's city CRA, then there's city limits for another block, and then there's, and that's why I mentioned last time I saw you guys, it's, you could pop quiz me, put me in a car and pop quiz me on exactly where the city limit lines, or all of us, I don't know. It's a very convoluted area up there, and that's also why I think the impact of this project is important to all of us is because I don't think anybody really treats it as that's the city and this is the county. I think it's a neighborhood. So, but yeah, just depends on what block we're talking about in terms of CRA.
Well, I like the CRA. I'm a big supporter of CRAs. And some of the stuff that you're doing in there, obviously, I completely support sidewalk utilities. We do that in every CRA in the county. That's what CRAs are for. I obviously would like to see our CRA that butts up to that, if it's in that proper, I think it may be in yours, to be exhausted on this project. The other question I have, the amount allocated for the CRA, that only goes through this fiscal year, right, Erica, not future years? So the future years, have you designated the amount that will go into this project?
So about half of the balance each year goes to debt service.
So half of it will go into this project? Okay, I didn't know that.
No. About half of it each year goes to pay debt service. So about half of our total budget in the west side of our total allocations and income each year from the west side has to go to debt service. Within that, of course, we hope to continue our residential property improvement and commercial property improvement projects. And based on what's remaining is what we would look most likely, pending CRA board approval, to allocate toward redevelopment of this project.
Okay. Commissioner Stroberger, you have a question?
Yeah, this is for Casey. When the bond was issued, there's a line item for $50 million project at Baptist, the old Baptist. What was that project?
So I think what you're referring to is the Schedule I, the TEFRA notice that went
Yeah.
along with the bond issuance. Sure, happy to talk that through for you. So what the Schedule I does, and with what TEFRA notices do, when you are going to obtain a large sum bond like this, is you put every potential use of the money in there, because once the TEFRA notice has been accepted, you cannot amend it at all. So the intention of this, if you'll notice, every single facility that Baptist owns is listed on the Schedule I as a potential use for bond money, in case something had happened with the build of the new campus. That did not happen. So the bond that was issued for the new campus in its entirety was $583 million. So we only executed on number one in there. We did not execute on any of the others. We did not get any money for any of the other properties.
Okay. Casey, I got it. You weren't there, I was. So I'm going to be tough on you. The deal was that Baptist was, demolition didn't come up at the time because we didn't know what we were going to do with that property. We thought that maybe it could be used. But on the health authority side, and I know everyone that was on the board believed that Baptist was going to take care of that property and turn it over to developers to pay the conduit bond debt. $50 million, I don't know if that was the right number. I don't know if you guys have ever thought about what the difference should be, other than it should be $3 million. But I know when I was the treasurer of that board, I did not believe that, I believed that the Baptist, before the state got engaged, was going to be responsible for that property. And that's not the case today. It's a different scenario. I got it. We went into a demolition phase. But I know that I do believe that Baptist should reflect. I know you put $3 million in, but you did put in a TEFRA hearing. You would put $50 million in. It's in the record. This board voted on it January 7th, 2020, on the minutes. I wasn't here. The mayor wasn't the mayor. But I guess the follow-up question to that is, in that you had also, I know this is a matter for Commissioner May, but you had put that you were going to put health care in there as one of the things for that community. Is that still a goal that Baptist is going to do?
Absolutely, and we have been having open and honest discussions with both Commissioner May and another healthcare provider in the community about the opportunity on the properties that Baptist is retaining in the donation agreement with the city. One building can be repurposed as a community center for the residents of that neighborhood, and one of the buildings could be repurposed for much-needed dental services in our community. And we actually have a tour with that healthcare provider of the facility again tomorrow. We've been on a few tours already, but we are absolutely still open to that and moving forward.
I got another tough question. I like you, but I don't want to beat you up. But the thing is, did Baptist ever just consider, after the state put in $7 million, paying the difference? Because from my standpoint, we're setting a precedent on this board, no matter what we give, that it's a corporate bailout. that we wouldn't probably give to Patty Shipyard or any other mom and pop shop that we don't do. To me, that's a big leap when we're talking this kind of money, when we have all kinds of businesses that fail, we put liens on their property, and then we take it over. And I mean, I can go through a list of those, I don't need to, but has that come up ever on your board to consider just paying the difference with the state funds?
So Baptist does not have the financial ability to move forward with this redevelopment on our own. Otherwise, we would have. The partnership, the private-public partnership is the most expedient way to get this redevelopment done and the demolition of the buildings. You see in other communities, hospitals sit empty for decades and become a source of blight and crime for the community.
Yeah.
We don't want that to happen. By partnering with the city and giving ownership to the city, they have access to much more funding as a municipality than a private organization would. And I would say that if we were to go this on our own, it likely would stand vacant for many, many, many years.
Well, but you can see my concern if Sacred Heart or HCA came and asked for money from the county for abatement, we would be potentially on the hook to treat them the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, Casey, you mentioned Baptist doesn't have the ability wouldn't have the ability to do the project. Are you saying the Baptist wouldn't have the ability to do the project without the $2 million from the county? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying $2 million is the void between what the budget is from the redevelopment that city, as Erica has said, has done very detailed due diligence on.
Yeah.
Baptist has committed $5.8 million towards this, so it's not that we are not contributing. We are.
Yeah, well, it's not that we're not contributing either. We took legislative action several years ago that's producing $13, $14 million a year for Baptist currently. You acknowledge that, I'm sure, right?
Well, what that allows us to do is tax ourselves. So the county allows Baptist to tax ourselves, send that money up to the federal government to get reimbursed for over $61 million in charity care that we provide to the community every single year.
That's not producing an additional $14 million a year of revenue to Baptist than it was prior to the legislative action that the board took?
It absolutely does, and it helps offset the $61 million in charity care that we lose every single year.
But that's $13 or $14 million that you were not receiving 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
That is correct.
Okay.
And the other healthcare systems in our community also.
But they're not here right now, so we're really just talking about Baptist. I mean, it's just our conversation, really. So that's not gross revenue that you've got personnel cost in, that you have cost of goods sold in. I mean, that's in hand incremental increase in net revenue coming to the hospital to help offset what you're spending.
To offset $61 million in losses. We provide many, many services to the community at a loss, including behavioral health.
As does your county government. I mean, that is what government does, provide services at a loss. We don't make money doing things, so we're providing our services, to the community as well. That's, from my point of view, Mr. Chairman, that's the partnership. I mean, that's what we've done that was not in place 5 years ago. That has been a huge benefit. It's produced $45 million in the last 3 or 4 years. It's produced $14 million this past fiscal year. I would expect the upcoming fiscal year would be in the same ballpark. And that's what, Mr. Chairman, that's kind of the crux of my, and the bond issue. So, all right, and the bond issue was raised. So Baptist only placed $583 million of the approved $900 million or $1 billion.
There was
That's
two
correct.
series bonds. It was, this. It was Series
Yes.
A and B. One
So
was
from the-
taxable. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
From the county's health facility website, you can see the amount that was approved was
So-
$583 million, and it was all dedicated to building the new campus. None of that money could have been used to tear down buildings at the old campus.
I did, Casey, I just asked how much you placed. You only placed $583 million.
$583 million. The rest was done through our operational reserves and philanthropy.
Okay.
to
But you
get to
only,
the $654 million price tag
but you only placed 583. That's what you're saying?
in bonds.
Okay,
Correct.
okay. All right, so, Mr. Chairman, we've taken a considerable step that's really aiding Baptist currently, as well as the other two healthcare providers. But again, they're not here asking for general fund money. If the funds were, if we could use local option sales tax money for it, I think my opinion would be a little bit different. But, and when you look at the spreadsheet that was provided to us that has the funding sources that are going into it, with all due respect, it's not the money that's going into it from the city, even if you're talking about the conduit money that's flowing through from the Department of Commerce, it's not impacting the city budget. It's specific defined sources that are coming from somewhere else. Even CRA money. If we could use CRA money for it, we have considerable CRA reserves. That would be, that would, be a more tenable possibility. But the general fund impact of $2 million, it is a real impact. It's going to change as we finalize the budget this summer. There's a proposed raise in there for employees of a certain percent, and $2 million out of the general fund will impact that, and that raise won't be what is being proposed currently if that was approved by our board. So, for my one vote, and I may be in the minority, certainly amongst the humans in the room, but I feel like the county is being a partner and has been a partner. Whatever agreement the city and the Baptists have come to, we weren't a party to that agreement. And, I don't like that, well, we're going to redevelop this. It's going to be this fantastic new project on this property, which everybody thinks is a fantastic idea. That's not our idea, nor our project. But if the county doesn't put $2 million in to demo the building, which is all our money's going to do, we're not partners in any other way, it's just going to demo the building, then we're standing in the way of the project. And I think that's an unfair assessment of reality.
Well, Commissioner Berry, I don't normally agree with you, but I agree with you on this. But I do want to say something, Casey, because I got to poke the skunk in the room. You were approved for $925 million. I was there, bond authority approved it, Class B bonds. You went at a lower level. 3 months ago, you came to us and asked for us to approve $40 more million, and at that meeting, I said, could you do the difference? I went and looked at the TEFRA hearing yesterday. You didn't put anything in there for Baptist for that hearing. You could have added that. You're still well under what the board was approved for at the 925.19, and I hate doing this, but that was actually, those are the facts. I didn't make that up. Mm-hmm. You could have easily abated this property with the state money, and I feel like I'm being put in, I think that the project is obviously noble. I support affordable housing. I support Baptists. But we're in a very, very precarious position because this is a corporate bailout for Baptists, is what it is. And it's really hard. I said I'd do something. I got some other issues I want to. I'm going to give you a break because you're taking a lot of heat.
It's okay.
But I want to, because I have a couple other questions for the city. But, I do think you should go back to your board and ask those questions. I'm just asking you as a friend and as
So
a...
I would just add from our bond counsel, who I spent a lot of time talking with yesterday, even if we had the additional money for the Legacy campus, those funds have to be used for capital expenditures. They could not be used for working capital. So that bond money would not be eligible to be used for a demo of a building.
But it might include a
That
demo,
is what-
right, and some transformation of that property, right?
What our bond counsel told me was those funds were not eligible to be used for demolition. They have to go to capital expenditures, not as working capital.
But the money that Steve was talking about, that the board approved, the $14 million, I believe that could have.
Again, that money helps offset the $62 million in charity care that we provide to the community, and we are losing $62 million every single year to provide these vital health care services to the most needy in our community.
Okay. Commissioner Hopper, you had your light on, then I'll go to Commissioner May.
Thanks. I actually have two questions. The first question is, could you actually keep the property, board it up, keep it within code, and then sell it for a profit instead of donating it?
So that was
Theoretically.
the original approach. We did put the entire campus on the market through CBRE. The only offer that we got was for the 11 acres that was sold to the Paces Foundation. We tried to sell this and do it on our own, and it became very clear that was just not a reality for us to be able to do this on our own, which is why we then approached the city in 2023 after looking at other communities that did utilize public-private partnerships for redevelopment opportunities of this scale, and even specifically for old hospital redevelopments.
But theoretically, it could sit there for another decade being vacant and unused.
Absolutely. It would
Okay.
get fenced up and just sit there, and as we've learned from other communities, become a source of blight and crime for that neighborhood.
Okay. And then there are 5 local hospitals that take part in the MSBU that was referred to earlier. Can you give us an idea of if we did not have that MSBU available to any of the hospitals in our community, what the negative impact would be on care for the people who can't afford it?
I can only speak to Baptist. I cannot speak on behalf of the other healthcare providers, but it would be a significant financial hit. And I know for Baptist, we would probably have to examine what types of services we might have to stop providing for the community or stop accepting patients, that might not have an ability to pay, that are either underinsured. It is our responsibility to care for the uninsured, and we will continue to do that. That is our mission as a healthcare organization. But we would likely have to take a hard look at the services that we do provide and what might not be able to do anymore.
Okay, thank you so much.
But Casey, you took on another $40 million debt to expand services at Baptist when we have multiple healthcare facilities that can do some of that work with the multiple insurance agencies that pay into these that are not just in the Medicaid and Medicare funds. I mean, you just literally took on another $40 million in debt to expand services at Baptist.
We refinanced old debt. We did
That's not
not
what the
take
TEFRA
on
said.
any.
It's not what the TEFRA said. I read it yesterday.
What we came for in January, that was refinancing of old debt.
I'd go back and look at what the TEFRA had in it because it
Okay,
talks
and we
about.
did work closely with the county attorney on that and helped us put together the resolution for it. But that was a refinance of old debt that we were able to get with a better rate of return.
I appreciate the clarification, but like I said, that's not what the TEFRA said. So,
Okay.
but good to know. Commissioner May?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Casey,
Yes.
in line with Mr. Chairman, could you open that bond? Could you open it back up? I mean, or is it
That-
closed? It's gone?
That bond is closed, yes. It closed in 2021.
Thanks.
And you cannot amend the use of a bond once it is closed.
And so I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to try to at least land this from the position that I sit in. Did you guys do the pre-assessment of asbestos to know how much asbestos is currently being detected?
We knew from years of renovations to that facility that asbestos was present in the building. Every time we tore down a wall to try to do a remodel or an expansion or a renovation, we discovered asbestos in the wall, as did the Geosyntec team when they were doing their deep assessment of the facilities. We had already done, as Erica shared, we had already done an assessment, but an additional assessment was needed to try to get an idea of the amount of asbestos. But honestly, until they start tearing those buildings down, nobody knows exactly how much is in there, and to Erica's point, what might be in the
But did you
basement.
have a pre-assessment of the scope, and did you align a value to that scope in the pre-assessment? I mean, obviously, when you dig into it, you obviously going to have contingency to find more, but is there a dollar value of the initial assessment of the asbestos?
Just specific to the asbestos,
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that
But it
question.
would
I
be-
do know that
is it fair to say it's significant?
our initial estimate of the demo, which we believed included abatement and assessment of the asbestos that might be in there, was approximately $16.5 million. But again,
What's that
the
number
city's,
again?
The original, we thought the total demolition budget would be 16.5 million.
Okay.
But that was just an assessment based on the best information that we had at the time with the city's more technical research and testing that was done. That's how we arrived at the number.
Right, yeah, and I can do with Mayor's team in those questions. So, Mr. Chairman, and so obviously this project has been important. And so I just want to bring a little history of probably why, Baptist Hospital is really significant, as all of our healthcare facilities are, because the county operated a hospital, University Hospital, and as we know, there was an African-American lady who was having a baby and died on her way to the hospital, in Baptist Hospital, and it galvanized the community, the Baptist churches, the African-American churches, to come out and support Baptist Hospital because there was nowhere else for people to go. And so it's significant within the community. It's significant within my district. Unfortunately, or fortunately, under the watch of other commissioners and community leaders, there was a move to move Baptist out of the neighborhood. It's not without question that I was disappointed for them to leave, but certainly understood, and it stayed in my district. And so when we look at this transformative project, I just don't see it as a demolition project. And I'll say this, it's been studied. I mean, how much y'all paid James Lima? $400,000?
I don't know that number off the top of my
But
head.
it's
but
hundreds
it
of
was
thousands
close
of
to there.
dollars. So years ago, even before the mayor was elected, for anybody that was on this board, probably other than Stephen Berry, we partnered with the city of Pensacola, CRA, Escambia County, Chad Henderson, and we wrote the West Marino District Plan. It's called Live, Work, and Play. And it did all of the assessments of what was important to the citizens. To me, at the end of the day, that's what's important. And so it was clear in James Lima report, people wanted health care there. People wanted food. They wanted retail. They wanted green space. What was broken in that neighborhood that connects Inglewood to Baptist to Cooper Young Park? I mean, streetscapes are broken, streets are broken, stormwater's a mess. Lightings and CRA infrastructure needs to be addressed. And what really happens is the city cannot address its infrastructure without the county, and the county can't address its infrastructure without the city, because it's all one. I mean, year after year, there's a conversation of how do we annex the city and the county? How do we put it together? I certainly don't want any more studies. I know the mayor's probably going to do another study, and we've talked about the studies and said that we should be at the table. The county's going to give money. I mean, that's part of the requirement. We need to be at the table. We need to be at the decision making, because it's just not about the $2 million. I mean, it's a drop in a bucket of what's really going to happen, but we should be, a part of what happens. And it could be you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, Ashley and I both represent the city. I mean, obviously, it's a neighborhood that I grew up in, and I have significant ties to. So in my conversation, I understand the bonds. I certainly understand what my colleague to the right is saying. I'm going to support the project, but I'm not going to support a demolition project. We have to take that label off a demolition project. I was very clear to Casey and to Mark this weekend that I'm not going to support it unless there's a component of health care there. I'm not going to support it unless it's a gathering place for people to be able to eat. And in our conversation, it was said that the city had first right of refusal. I quickly picked up the phone and called the mayor and said, how do we make this transformative? This project is going to take a decade to really complete to the end. I mean, you're going to have a year and a half, 2 years of demo. You're going to have site preparation. You're going to have drawings. We have an opportunity right now to not say that we're putting our money into a demo, to say immediately within 6 to 12 months, we can be providing opportunity for seniors, or we can be providing health care and dental with those buildings that, and I don't want to speak for Baptist, Casey, you're there, that they have told me, and it's not in writing, I didn't put it, is that we would have those two buildings, which are probably worth, $1 million+ that they're going to deed to this county, and they're going to deed to the healthcare. And so for me, I'm not sending money. We can call it demolition, we can call it redevelopment, we can put whatever words we want to put on it. But at the end of the day, those promises made to the citizens in Morris Court, in Addis Court, on the Alphabet Street, to seniors who come to Brownsville every day, to my aunts, my mother, all the people that grew up in that neighborhood, that we were going to do something. Most of the seniors that are there are 75, 85, 90 years old. They don't have time to wait for this redevelopment. It's great they're going to have affordable housing. It's great they're going to have attainable housing. It's great that they're going to have this new downtown. But instantly, we could put programs in that neighborhood with the collaboration and the commitment from Baptist. And I would say to you, before yesterday, we didn't have that commitment. It was what I received from Baptist is, we're going to come with the demolition, and then we're going to figure this out later. And I clearly said that's not the way I'm going to support it. I mean, in God we trust, all the others sign the dotted line. And so I am proposing that we negotiate with Baptist upon those two buildings. I've talked with the mayor in terms of we would have someone sitting at the table in decision-making capacity on the redevelopment as we move forward with this project. So I understand where you are on demo. I do, and that's a hard sell to citizens, that's a hard sell to anybody. But in terms of investing, in terms of getting an ROI for the county and ROI for our citizens, I think that that's a happy compromise. There's no way that the city is going to do construction and not tear up county streets. I think a part of this is, we got to have money that when we tear up these roads, we tear up these streets, we got to have money for rebuilding of these streets. There's no way to handle stormwater in the city and not handle stormwater in the county. It's just impossible. It's contiguous. And so, I mean, when we look at this as a holistic project, we can make that happen. We don't need anybody else to tell us. Well, the people have spoken. Quite frankly, the people are sick of studies, they're sick of dial sessions, they are sick of going to meetings, because what they've said this is a decade old. This study is 10 years old that we went to the community and made people come out day in and day out, and we made them promises that were never kept. And so for me, this is an opportunity for us as a county, me as a leader, to work with the mayor, work with the city, and say, you know what? We may not get it perfect, may not get everything that you want, but here's an opportunity that we're going to be able to do something. And Baptist has to put some skin in the game, city put some skin in the game, and we put some skin in the game, and then we can do something that's redeveloped. And so I know there's a vote tonight, but I just wanted to kind of, I think everyone's laid out.
on this tonight.
Okay. Okay. Well, I know that everybody's laid out where they are. I clearly wanted to lay out where I am, and I think that there's an opportunity for a win-win for the city, the county, and Baptist.
And
I certainly want to eliminate all of this continued discussion of demolition, because I'm looking at it as a project that we've studied to death. We spent hundreds and hundreds of times. Our CRA spent, probably $100,000 on this plan. At least we can take these plans and implement a portion of this plan instantly.
Well, thank you, Commissioner May. Casey, is Baptist willing to commit what they will give for the health care today?
So, absolutely happy to share that with you. As I shared, we are retaining 3 physical properties after the city's donation that are not included in the donation agreement with the city. It was written into the donation agreement that the city would have right of first offer on those properties. The mayor and I have discussed potential future uses, and he is supportive of us now looking at donating 2 of those buildings, one to the county that can be repurposed as a community center, and one to Community Health Northwest Florida for them to be able to expand their much-needed dental services. Dental is a huge need in our community, and we believe that a responsible way to move forward with healthcare in that community is to donate that facility to Community Health Northwest Florida and allow Chandra and her team to expand the much-needed dental services for our community.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, I
I'm sorry.
don't want to cut you off. Casey, and Mr. Mayor, help me with this. It's not the potential that we're going to do it. We're going to do it. I mean, I think the mayor's acquiesced. We're going to have those buildings. That's part of the deal.
Yeah, let me clarify on the right of first refusal. My position was that when the city, the state, and the county were going to have this land that becomes ultimately a subsidy, which, as we all know, any affordable housing is going to require some type of subsidy, and the dirt becomes that. My position was, if the Baptist was going to keep those buildings for their normal operations, that be okay. However, what we didn't want is to have a lot of blood, sweat, and tears go into the redevelopment, and then those properties just go on the private market and we have no conversation about it. We wanted to have some long-term control. That isn't against community health or against the county or anything else. That was to put in a position for the community good. And if the community good, if that is health services, which I couldn't agree more, or dental services, if that's what it's going towards, absolutely. That was just a protection put in place to say, we're not going to go work on these 38 acres and then that there be 3 random parcels that are just sold to be anything they want them to be without the city having some say. So happy to acquiesce that, and I've already discussed that with our city attorney about that it should be relatively easy to manage or amend, whatever the case may be.
Thank you, Mr. And
Mayor, if you'll stay there, because I got some questions.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. And so in all of this, obviously this has been a heavy lift. And, probably in your party, if we're going to make America great, we got to negotiate. So I tried to take the Republican stance that you gave me. But we've certainly.
I like the Elon Musk.
You like Elon Musk. He's gone. He's a Democrat now. But hopefully, the value of these properties will bring value to a community instantly, and where we could acquire those. And I think that, initially, it was Baptist was retaining those properties, and the mayor had first right of refusal. We know what the value will happen once we do the redevelopment, and I think that, worst case scenario, whether the one goes to community health and one's to the county, or 2 to the county, or whatever, if there was a opportunity where we found ourselves needing funds, I would tell you those 2 properties would be probably well over the 2 million or $1 million or whatever the number is that we come to. I think that those buildings would add value, but more importantly, it's live, work, and play, and it's going to bring a quality of life and give a community hope and give us the opportunity to demonstrate to citizens that their neighborhood is not being abandoned and they don't have to wait forever for services to arrive. So.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, but I also will tell you that 21,000 people drive out the front gate of the base, and they've looked at a blight building for 21 years plus. At Marcello's, a lot of people got engaged, had anniversaries, birthdays, and they're not getting a bailout. They're not getting one.
Understand.
Commissioner Stroberger, you have a comment?
Yeah, I wrote my question down just in case I forgot it, because I'm a man of a certain age. Decision on this is hard, and the more I think about it, and the more time I have to think about it, the more I think about it. And I know from your point of view, it's an easy answer. And I think from Commissioner Kohler and perhaps Commissioner Berry's point of view, it's a different answer, and it's an easy question for them to answer. Because of the complexity of this demo, you didn't take the lowest bid, and you took the highest bid. I know it's more complicated than that, and I appreciate the explanation of the bid process, and I'm satisfied with that. We don't have the demo expertise, but we do have the experience with much of the ancillary tasks, to include disposal and the bid process. And I wasn't here. I think we should have been part of the process. And I know that sounds like gridlock. We're all part of the process, but that's where we're kind of at a little bit right now anyway. I think that I would appreciate it if the county was part of it, because I do agree on both with the blight issue and the transformational process in that neighborhood. I also think it is a corporate bailout. I agree with that. And the way I'm grounded, I kind of lean in that direction. Like I said, the more I think about it, that's how I think about it. Go ahead.
Yeah. To address
Go ahead, Mayor.
a few things, sorry, I know there's been a lot since I've been back up here, but first, just for the record, I know Commissioner Berry knows this, we weren't making a specific request for general fund dollars. I understand what you're saying. I just want to be clear on that. We didn't say we must have general fund dollars from, if there were other avenues to do that. That was never, from 17 months ago, ever part of the conversation. It was just a $2 million request. Obviously, your conversation with Baptist about bonding or disdain or disagreements about bonding is a different scenario than us. We were not part of that process, so certainly I know you guys can understand that. But also within this is the part of the concoction of the $7 million request that Senator Broxton and our legislative delegation put together was built on the foundation that this would be what the stack was going to be, that there was some general commitment to it. And again, it's why I sent a letter to your question, Commissioner Strohberger. It's why I sent a letter on January 8th, 2024 to Commissioner Berry and to Wes that said, here's our request for $2 million. Here's all the community benefits that we'd be willing to agree to. And then we didn't hear a response back. Now, the response we got eventually was, when you guys took the vote on March, or not you, but when the 3-0 vote on March 21, that generally approved, and Board Chair, obviously I know you say, well, we didn't agree on an exact number. But my feeling is this, from the city's perspective, and I am not a third party to disagreements, or I'm not here to argue for or against how you feel about bonds and Baptist. But I will say this is a set, if you look through our glass, we've had 17 months of which our request and discussion has not changed from the city's perspective. So all I wish, the same way you wish, is that if we sent a letter on January 8th, 2024 requesting it, and then there was board action taken on March 21st, 2024 saying to go work with the city, I find it frustrating that it would be that the look that the city decided to not have anybody included. We were more than ready. We sent it in writing, and you guys took a vote on it. So I know we all have a million things going on. I certainly understand and respect that. But we could have been having bond conversations 16 months ago. Or 12 months ago. Those had been opened and closed since 2021. And so I'm not here to convince anybody how they feel about those particular scenarios, nor am I an expert to be able to do that. But we have been here waiting to have conversation. And where our feet are today, to Commissioner May's point, I'm perfectly happy, as anybody who invested in it. We're talking about it at the Base Center right now. We want people involved that are going to have a financial investment in it. We have absolutely no problem with the county previously, today, or tomorrow, requesting that they have some, for the county dollars, for them to have some type of approach. But I will say this, there's about 150 houses that are only in the county within 300 yards of this site. So I don't want that to get lost here amongst CRA conversation and everything else. There's about 150, and GIS can get you, I'm sure, an exact number. That was my rough math. But within 300 yards of this place are people who only live in the city, only live in the county, are not city residents, and that are your residents. And I always remind you, our city residents are county residents. All of them are. We are all county residents. And so it really, I guess it sounds like it comes down to, we are teetering on the poison pill argument, is to say, what are we obligated to do legally? What do we feel like we want to do? And what I can tell you is if everybody takes that position, we're going to sit with an abandoned building in a neighborhood for 10 or 15 or 20 years. So what I'm requesting, I'm not speaking for Baptist, what I'm requesting is that we partner and we don't take the poison pill approach to say, whose legal obligation is to do this, and we look our neighbors in the eyes and we say, we aren't going to do this. We are not. We have a million projects too that could be taking up Erica's bandwidth and all of that. And legally speaking, we have no legal obligation, but I feel like we have a human obligation to this neighborhood. And me driving by those buildings or starting to take emails wondering why I'm not allowing, or why I would allow those to stand there, is not something I was willing to do. And so that meant we are going to go beyond what our legal obligation is. So that you guys have to make your own decision, and I respect whatever decision that is. But just know there are other people that are going well beyond their legal obligation because they think it's the right thing to do.
I'm sorry, I might have missed it. Have we talked about more CRA dollars, using more CRA dollars?
We brought up the projections in the future. Eric could address that.
And listen, if the heartburn lied solely in where specific dollars are allocated, we have so many specific dollars that are going to be allocated towards many parts of this project, then that's a conversation we could have had or could have. Yeah. If it's fixing the roads and that's what qualifies, or it's redeveloping the site, and that's what qualifies. I mean, understand, from our position, we have millions of dollars pending to us in many different ways. And so our conversation does not end at $2 million for demo. We are continuing. So if we're trying to get creative about something that you can get more comfortable with, we would absolutely entertain that. We need the dollars because we have millions more to go. But if it's about a mechanism, and there's something we can do to have a reasonable conversation about that, I know we would be willing.
Mayor, I'd like to can I ask you a couple of questions? Because and
Of course.
I totally agree with the concept of this project. It's how we get to the money dollar amount. But I have a couple of questions that I don't understand. I know you and I had a good conversation last night, and maybe we should have reached out. I went back and watched that tape twice, and there was numbers all over the place. You know that as well as I do. And we agreed conceptually to work with you. I don't know what that definition should have been, but we're here today to do something, right? I do think it's notable when the bids came back, I went to county administrator and asked him to have our purchasing director to look at them. Obviously, they have a different opinion than what you had. I'm not saying you're wrong. I've heard what you had to say, but our purchasing department obviously had a different opinion. Doesn't mean they're right. I'm just saying we had a different opinion on which one we should have taken. I'm not going to pull them up. I don't think that's necessary to have that argument. But I do have a question, because when we talk about CRA dollars, originally you had picked the $14.4 million project. It was Sessler, and then there was a protest bid. And then at that time, you took the North Star that was a little over 13.1. Where were you going to make up the delta on that 1.3 million?
That's a conversation that we, as Erica already mentioned, we already have a $600,000 delta right now, what's currently proposed. And that's why I keep mentioning, if the assumption is that it's a flippant decision to just take the larger amount, number one, look how much time and energy and bandwidth that we're putting in, not only to be here today, but a prolonged 90-day-ish conversation that we've had. If it was flippant, we would have already been smoked out of that by now. We would have been well on our way to go picking the lowest bidder if we truly thought that was what's best for the community. So I think the alibi to that is why would we even be here if the difference of $2 million, if we could have just easily gone to the lower bidder. But
well, that wasn't the lowest bid. That was the fourth bid. The North Star was the third lowest bid. So we didn't take
Right.
Independence or Renaissance. So we took the fourth, the second highest bid.
Yes,
and then
the
we took
highest
middle
bid was 19.2 million.
Correct.
I just want to be clear that the
I
highest
agree.
bid was 19.2.
I agree with that. So it wasn't the lowest bid. It wasn't the second lowest bid. It wasn't the third lowest bid until after the protest bid. You originally picked the second highest bid. And then after the protest bid, you guys reviewed it and then took North Star, which is, I understand that. They didn't meet the qualifications. But my take on that still is a $1.3 million difference that would have had to come from somewhere, even if the county gave you $2 million. I just was kind of curious where it was going to come from.
Yeah, great question. We're going to go figure out how to do it, but then there's no need to figure out how to go get 1.3 million if we're having a conversation about getting nothing from the county. So,
Well, I never said that. I made a commitment.
But I'm just saying, if we haven't crossed that bridge because we haven't arrived at it yet. So, so we know the work that we've got ahead of us, to make that happen. And certainly you should have no expectation of whatever you decide that we would be saying, hey, what about 2.1 or 2.2? I've approached that this entire time with the certainty of this request dating back to January 8th, 2024.
Right, and I think
where
that could have
the $2
been
million,
better.
I mean, just to be clear, the $2 million, the request was in. I don't know what was exactly discussed. I hadn't listened to it in a few weeks from the meeting in March of 2024, but the formal letter from me to the county specifically stated $2 million, so dating back to January 8th, 2024, and in meetings with Senator Broxton and others had been discussed verbally prior to that as well.
No, and I appreciate that, and I think it's just a difference of where we're at on how we fund it.
Yeah, I get it.
Commissioner Stroberger?
We have $2.8 million in abatement funds, is that right, Wes?
That goes for the whole county. The whole county, for each one of us. So, and that's,
enforcement reserve.
in reserve.
Wes, one more time?
Code enforcement reserves.
Right.
Okay.
Goes to abatement that we utilize at our code enforcement.
And we can't give all that because we have abatement in the county for the whole
Right,
county.
yeah.
That
would limit our
we don't have
abatement.
enough. Last year, we used up all the abatement funds for the county. We need more abatement because we have so much blight. And this is a complete different discussion. But that's one of the options if we decide to move forward that I would be more than willing to consider if Commissioner May was willing to give up his abatement funds. It's in his district. I would come to some number. I think that would be the only logical way that I could get to something. The other thing, Mayor, I
And
think.
so, Mike, and I'm good with that if that's what it takes. But I'm not going to continue to have the conversation that it's just an abatement fund or it's a demolition project. I mean, however we allocate the numbers, I mean, if we're going to look at this, as not just my district, there are some projects that are universal projects. Outline Field 8, it's universal. I mean, just can't throw it in my district. The Civic Center, it borders Ashley and I district. I mean, it may not, the jail, it's in my district, but it's a huge project. The Buell Exchange, I mean, there are some things that are kind of universal beneficial to all citizens. And so, I mean, I think the narrative that we keep talking about demolition is not necessarily the right narrative. The mayor has just said that we can be creative. We can talk about what infrastructure improvements we're going to need to make, what roads are we going to need to repave, what connectivity we're going to have to bring, what healthcare deliverables are we going to have, what community center we're going to have, and have a creative, wholesome project. And get it, they've made a presentation, any good negotiation, someone presents, someone responds. I think if conceptually we can see the vision, technically we can get to where it is. Maybe it's 1.8 million, maybe it's 1.7, maybe it's 2 million. We don't know, but I think that we can negotiate and figure that out. And listen, if it takes the abatement funds from my district, I gave the mayor my word that I was going to support. That's what we'll do. But I don't think that this is just an abatement. This is wrong or right. This is 50-plus acres in the heart of the city, and quite frankly, the transformation, if not strategically transform, is going to end up with the same gentrification that has ended up on all the alphabet streets, that has ended up at L.A. Kersey, that was transformational, that was an all-African-American school, Blunt Middle School, that was an all-African-American middle school, Hallmark was an all-African-American middle school, and, because of failed leadership, it transformed without critical thinking, and the same people who lived in the neighborhood can no longer afford to live in the neighborhood, so they decharacterize the neighborhood, in the name of capitalism. And so the young people that's in our summer intern program can't even live there. And so for me, it's about being here at the table to make those decisions, to make sure that young grandchildren who grew up in Morris Court get the opportunity to live and not continue to have this discussion about a demo project or an abatement project. We studied it. It was a commitment, whether we like it or not. 10 years ago, we said we were going to transform this neighborhood. Did we do it? No. And this was with Baptist staying there. Baptist leaves. Neighborhood staying abandoned. 2 years. We do another James Lima study. Oh, we give people all this false hope. They come to meetings week in and week out. But we ain't gonna do nothing now. Let's have one more study and then kick it down the road 5 more years. And so for me, we can figure out how not to do it or figure out how to do it. And how do we get those funds? We can figure out how to get those funds, whether it's CRA funds or whether it's commissioners. We all have discretionary. Listen, I'll put my skin in the game. I'll put my money where my mouth is to transform the neighborhood. But hopefully, we understand that it's just not, when we get Avalon, we get ROIs, we get taxes, it just won't be District 3 that's utilizing these dollars. I mean, when we sell Outline Field 8 or we do some Outline Field 8, it's just not, District 4 or District 2 or 1 that gets the money. It's all about district. So all I'm saying is that we have to kind of be creative. This is an important project. It's okay that the mayor asked for $2 million. Maybe that's not the number. Maybe the number is 1.7. Maybe the number is 1.8. I mean, maybe it's 2.1. I don't know. But if we just deadlock this just based on a demo project, then we're shooting ourselves.
It's not 2.1.
Excuse me? I didn't hear you.
Yeah,
No.
It's way higher.
No. I don't know. Well, whatever. And that's all I'm saying, Mike. And so, I mean, we can be.
I'll just put out there, and Mayor, I'll just say this. I need to find out the estimate of what you're going to get in tax revenue in that CRA. That's important to me because that money will go into that area, which I'm totally for. That has to be considered with ours. The other thing is asking us to put money in our general fund when you take it out of the CR, which I love, don't get me wrong. Like I've already said, that's a big leap for me.
Oh, I hear what, Mike, I hear what you and Commissioner Barry said.
When we're
And
going
so
to put
don't
in
have to get out
more
of
money
general
than the
fund.
county, than the city on their
Well, I
project,
understand.
based on what we have now. I'm not saying you may not put money in later. And then when we look at the other cost, which Erica did a good job of saying that I guess that 2.9 million number is pretty accurate. I'm not 100% sure. It sounds like it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
So, but that has some flexibility in it. The other thing I think I want to put on the record, just because you shared with me this last night, and the agreement you took is without any change orders, correct?
Well, let me be clear. We are entering negotiation with the demo contract. We have not signed anything. Is that what you're specifically?
Yeah, but that's, okay, I'm sorry, I may have worded that wrong, but that is, if the city takes that deal, they can't add a change order on that?
Well, what I'd tell you is, yeah, she can give you the details. What we were discussing is what it said in the RFP in terms of why they were ranked. You mentioned that earlier, why they were ranked where they were ranked. Well, part of the downward ranking of the lower priced was the understanding with clarity that our RFP said we do not want these change orders. Well, when someone comes right in and says, oh, by the way, there's a massive change order that we're going to go ahead and put in, obviously, if you're on that selection team, that's going to, I would imagine that's going to have some impact on you.
Well, it's a huge deal. I get, that is a really big deal, because we do deal with change orders every meeting here.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure the city does as well, so. and-
So I don't want to say on record they have no legal ability to do anything. What I was referring to was we were very clear in the RFP to say that we expect a totality type of price, and I'm paraphrasing obviously, that we don't want to be change ordered to death on this because, and honestly, the genesis of that was because of the mixed capital stack, is that we didn't want to come to you for $2 million and then it ballooned during the middle of the project by $5 million more. I mean, we wanted, and we've seen that happen before. I mentioned, the example at Roger Scott Tennis Center. I mean, that ballooned, that got finished when I was here, but that ballooned significantly well after the request from the county. Very appreciative of that, but the county residents got the same impact for what was believed to be a larger percentage of the cost that went down, and the city took that on. And so we just wanted, with all the parties involved, we wanted the most total number we could get. And that's, again, I think yet another reason why you see 14.4 and 13.3 ranking higher than the cheapest possible one.
Mike, I'm going to add this, and then I'm going to end the conversation, and,
Is that a promise? I want
no,
that on
I'm not
record.
going to vote, but I mean, I'm going to bring it, I'm going to bring, I'm going to make a motion, I know I can't do the committee of whole, and people can second it, or they can't, I mean, because of, if I told the mayor, if I make a commitment, I'm going to live to my commitment. But I want to just set a precedent that's real clear. If certain people come to this and want to get $1 million for tennis clay courts in the city, we build the clay courts. Some people want to get $1 million for some sailing yachts, get $1 million. We go to the airport, you're going to create some jobs at ST Aerospace. I don't know how many they create. Multiple $1 million. And so the president of us, giving money to the city is nothing new. And so I can just tell you that there's an opportunity to negotiate, an ROI that is more beneficial to a more people in terms of how do we work out this deal than all those precedents that have already been set, that have already been in place. And so it's happening. I'm not saying that not necessarily on this mayor or that mayor. I mean, I think that if there's an opportunity for our staff, our legal to sit down with their legal and the mayor to come back to something that's acceptable, we shouldn't close that door, and nor should we say that we hadn't done it. I mean, I couldn't in good faith say that I voted to give $1 million for some clay courts for people to play tennis, and I wouldn't find and figure out a way to figure out how people can have a quality of life. I mean, I just, in good conscience, couldn't do that.
That's a very valid point. But Mayor, how much additional did you pay for those clay courts? It was like 2.5 additional. It was 3 times that at least, I think.
I get it. And
The cost
I know
ballooned
where you're
significantly.
but I'm saying the precedent
The
of what
differential's
we did,
a lot
so somebody can go
different
play. Tennis is, I mean, maybe it's a good quality of life when you're drinking wine and playing tennis, but I mean, it doesn't put a roof over your head. I mean, and so that's not, it actually wasn't in office. I mean, but it doesn't matter.
I agree.
It doesn't matter. I mean, the president has been paying, we put money and for hangars,
I get
that
it.
maybe people in that district don't even get a job. I mean, which I supported all of those. I raised my hand, so.
Commissioner Barry, Mayor, did you want?
I just wanted to, sorry, if you don't mind, thank you.
Yeah, and then I'm going to go to Commissioner Barry because he's has light on, but you go ahead and comment.
Okay, so just to respond to that, I want to be clear and defend the conversation that the city's only put $1 million in. Number one, we got the first $5 million ever around this project was that HUD CDBG grant. No, it's not from the general fund, but we had a lot of people work on that, and that could have been allocated anywhere. There was no requirement it had to be, we could have put an application, won or lost, but we decided to use one of our options as putting that in. That's number one. Number two is, as part of our creative agreement, if you want some version, and of course we would have to go run numbers, I couldn't tell you what it was. We're so confident that we have so much more money to spend that if the heartburn is we feel like we're putting in more, then if you want us to sign something that says we promise we're gonna spend $1.1 million more on this project, that would be the easiest promise of all, because we have, and that's again, for some reason, because we're only talking about demolition, and I agree with Commissioner May, I'm not doing this to knock down a building, I'm doing this to save a neighborhood and to build prosperity in our city. So this is a long game project. I'm happy to commit in writing that we are going to be spending additional dollars above and beyond what we already have. But for some reason, we get judged as if the finish line of this project is the building's going down. And we have so much ahead of us, including money right now, to your point. So if that's the direction you guys decide to go, would we entertain saying that we have a larger financial commitment? Yes, because we're already going on that road anyway. So we're happy to put that if that gives any comfort.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to put you on the spot. I just
Hey,
Oh,
you gotta let him go, man. You can't
this might be
Commissioner Barry.
beneficial for him.
Yeah, so, and I have some other comments, but since you mentioned that, Mr. Mayor, I mean, the reason that the conversation here is being centered around the demo is that's where that's where our money is plugged in the project line.
Sure.
I mean, that's the reason the conversation has become framed in the way that it has, is that is where our money is plugged in, and apparently, it's, perhaps there's other conversations that are dependent upon our money going into that line on the demo, and that's the biggest hurdle. I support the project, and Lumen, it's been more than 10 years since we, funded the Live, Work, and Play study in that area, and that was my first interaction with Chad at that time. That's the first time I met him as a commissioner, trying to deploy that project. But I support the project. I think everything holistically that we're talking about is fantastic. I think it's great. And it will be years out, probably, before you start to see the benefit. But I think once the benefit is in place, it'll be a generational type benefit. It just may take some years to get there. So I think it's fantastic. And my only issue is the funding source. In my opinion, we owe it to, not just, us as a five-member body here, but we owe it to our employees to protect those general fund dollars. And the other projects that we've partnered with the city on, and and have put, not just partnered with the city on, but we've put money into other projects that we're not within the city limits. None of those dollars have come out of the general fund. Right. That's the biggest difference between this conversation and the other conversations. We can budget things, we can piece dollars together from a lot of other sources, but the general fund dollars, that's my biggest concern. I think the project's fantastic, and that's where I just didn't like the way that the county is being framed in this conversation. We've got this, we have this Van Gogh portrait of what this community is going to look like in the future, which is great. And the only thing that's keeping our community from having this beautiful portrait being painted is the county's $2 million for demo. And I think that's unfair, because it's not an accurate representation. I believe our entire board supports the project. I think a few of us have issues, and I didn't know exactly Commissioner Strubber's opinion, but now I have some feeling for it. But I think a few of us have an issue with the funding source more so than anything else. I know that's my issue, and I think it's probably my colleagues. So, yeah, if the conversations can go on and we can find, we can find a way to access some different money, then and view the project as an economic development project, or I'm not a environmental person. If perhaps there's a way to view the project as an environmental type project, if what you're doing is you're being proactive, avoiding a future environmental concern, maybe that's an angle. I don't know exactly, but if there's a creative way to access other dollars that we have, then I'm certainly going to support my colleague to my left as I have for over a decade, and I'm going to help him find a way to get the project funded. But we have to get out of the general fund, and that's not DC's concern. I understand that, but it is, as we're the ones that are having to make the decision, I think it should be our concern.
Commissioner Berry, I totally agree with that statement. It's not against it. It is an issue. And then one thing I would say to the mayor, and I'm just asking you to go back and talk to your team, you should have at least equal stake in this project, because the funds that come back, and this is just my humble opinion, that will go back into the CRA. It's in the incorporated area. I agree that we should try to help, even though I have a corporate abatement department, but everything that Commissioner Berry said, I think we should go back and scratch our head and try to figure out how we can get something. But at the same time, I also think you should have at least equitable skin in the game, and maybe you do. I just don't see that on where we are today. We're projecting that you may. You said you'd sign a document. I appreciate that. But I would like to see that be somewhat more parallel.
Well, I think I can certainly compliment our staff and to both of you, Commissioner Berry, Commissioner Kohler, our staff. We've got, I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to be as creative deal makers to make things happen for the city. We have not been, or certainly nobody on my staff's ever advised me that we've demanded that they be general fund, or they demanded, Commissioner Baird, to your question, I feel like they were included in the demo just because that was what we were talking about, not because we refused that and the only obligation I know of is the language within the donation agreement, which is just how it was written because we had to get it done, and we hadn't had any conversation or any feedback necessarily from you guys. And I believe, and Casey would have to confirm that the Baptist board action had presumed that. But from a state perspective or anything.
That's a little bit problematic to have a commitment from a third party into an agreement between two other parties that's dependent upon the action by someone that's not, we're not a signatory to your donation agreement, yet money from us is plugged into a contract or a legal agreement that we weren't.
And and if you don't have, and if the county doesn't put up $2 million, we don't have to close. So, but we had to do something, and what my top preference would have been deal with all of these questions 15 months ago. That would have been my preference, because all of this creative deal making, all of the bond conversation, all of that, there was nothing precluding involvement, nothing precluding those conversations happening. So, you have to understand, we would have been happy to have whatever conversations that you wanted. We didn't. We emailed in January, you took action in March, and yeah, we have state deadlines for the $7 million. So remember, we've got a lot of converging deadlines, which isn't y'all's issue. It's part of the blood, sweat, and tears and why this is important. So that, I just want to make sure, we are happy to have, if there's a creative way that still gets this done, but it would have been easier to do this a year ago, but we are where we are, and if there's something that we can talk about, I'm certainly happy to do that.
Commissioner Hoffberger and then Commissioner May.
Right. This has been referred to as a noble project, that it meets a need in the community. It adds to the quality of life. It's going to be a transformative project. And I'm hoping that we can be a good partner and not just sit on the sidelines and watch it happen. And sometimes when you're a partner, you don't get to choose everything that happens in the negotiation, but we do get to choose to take part. And I think we were elected to be leaders, and I hope that we can all choose to lead our community to a project that does provide affordable housing, because I know that's something that impacts us countywide, not just in the city and not just district by district. When it comes to funding, and I'm not sure who can answer this question, but I want to throw it out there, is there a possibility to use SHIP funds that we have been using for the demo and replace project and funnel
good
those
question.
funds to the demo of this project?
Claire, do you know the answer to that? I know you got completely blindsided.
I bet you can't use SHIP, but you probably could use community block grant dollars. I don't think you can use SHIP dollars, but you probably could use community CBG money. Right, Garrett?
Is that, Claire, do you mind, because that's
Claire.
important to know if we're not gonna make a decision today, but as we go back and try to figure out, I think it's important that we have all options out there, because as you know, we can't talk.
Yeah.
So-
I was just discussing with Garrett just a few minutes ago regarding CDBG. So it's probably not going to be possible because whatever you demo with HUD dollars, you have to rebuild. So a lot of the project that's going to be going in place, I don't know if it's going to be all low mod, so we don't know. So it would be really messy to throw some CDBG money in there and then not be able to control the outcome of the final layout. And
So
then
you
the
have to
SHIP
rebuild
dollar-
the exact same thing, or you just have to rebuild something that will house people?
It's a lot of compliance that goes along with those federal dollars that you have to focus on low, moderate.
That's probably why the city
So
did it.
all it would be, is if you took CBG money and you decided to tear it down, then you would have to provide housing for low to moderate income. And you would have to have that commitment to those units to stay at that rate.
Yeah.
And I guess but then that would have to be a negotiation with the developer to make sure that you were going to keep those units at that rate. But I think that that's probably the intention of the mayor, is to have some low to moderate units within this project.
And the other part of that too, Commissioner, is that whatever funding we do, if we use CDBG, all that has to be cleared through HUD. So that's a whole nother project that has to be cleared from the beginning to end, like we did the Harris Boulevard project.
How much do we have in CDBG?
We have a lot. There's money there. It's just, how do we get there?
Like
We
millions,
just have
or
to-
like hundreds of thousands, or like?
There's millions.
It's
dollars
millions.
That we have in our city, yeah.
I mean,
Okay, it's just a good point. I think maybe we ought to look at all options. I appreciate that. I think this is a good question.
well,
Commissioner
that's the
May?
creativity in are you done with Claire?
You're up and back.
No, you done it, and it's more for the mayor. Commissioner Baird, thank you for being open, and certainly I'm totally committed to where you and Commissioner Kohler are. I mean, I'm all about getting our employee raises. I mean, particularly those employees that make less than, $40,000, they should be getting significant raises, and people that make six figures probably shouldn't. So, I mean, you're going to find me supporting the raises, but I think that we could be creative, Mr. Mayor, in things that if we put money in, last in, first out. If you redevelop it and we're selling property, there's an opportunity for us to recoup money. I think there are always things in which you could write in that would be an ROI, for the county. And I think you. I'm not putting you on the spot, but because we've had
what I can say
every other
now is
conversation we've
I'm
had.
open to any of that, and you guys well know I fully respect the conversation of the preciousness of general fund dollars. I totally respect that while we're talking about cutting property tax and everything else, and ultimately defunding public safety by. So I don't want to go on that tangent, but so I totally understand and appreciate the preciousness, and that's why I wanted to be clear. I didn't want there to be any miscommunication that we have specifically requested general fund dollars. We are open to whatever conversation. At the end, you have to look at it. Our perspective is this: we have 16 million-ish to handle yesterday, and then we've got multiple millions of dollars to get property going. I would not count on us selling any property. When you look at the Bayou District Foundation, that was all, most of our projects, when we've given land, whether it's the land trust or anything else, is not only the land donation, there's additional funds that go in. And so if this is going to be a mixed income project, I don't expect that there's going to be.
And probably not.
Yeah.
I was just saying,
But I hear
if
you,
it
but
did, the
something
city
like
wouldn't,
that.
if it happened to be sold, or it wouldn't be money going back to the city coffers in the county.
Correct.
It would be proportionally distributed if
Yeah,
the-
revenue that came back in would be proportional, yeah. So any of that type of stuff, we're certainly open to having a conversation about. And if there's aspects that are tomorrow's spend that helps us, we're just trying to close the gap of the multi-millions of dollars that we have. And to Commissioner Hopperger's point, this is about commitment. I mean, we did sit with the state and who went to go get 7 million and said, and they wanted to look us in the eye and say, hey, before I go to Tallahassee, Senator Broxton met with us and said, before I go to Tallahassee, I want some that everybody else is committed. So there's some commitment level here too, less about the dollars and just saying that this is a value to all of us together, and it's a value to our neighbors, it's a value to our county neighbors, and I mean, I think there's some symbolism in us working together on this, and that when we go cut a ribbon somewhere on this, or however many years from now, or whoever gets to do that, is able to say, this was the seminal moment where the city and county decided to work together and make this happen.
All right, and Mr. Mayor, too, the credit, as the chairman said, obviously, we can't have these discussions, so I can, 15 months ago, the conversation probably would have been different. I mean, because, it was 3 people sitting here, and today it's 5 that's sitting here that made that decision. And
Right.
hopefully I've been consistent in what I've said, but I think that it has been beneficial today to have this conversation out
Absolutely.
in the open. And so I don't want any of our colleagues to think that, you're not valued. From my perspective,
Yeah.
they are, but this is, for me, a important project for the community. And I think, in all fairness to you, in the plug-in number, I mean, we just been talking about demolition, but this has all been evolving. I mean, it was just yesterday that I was able to meet with community health and get the buildings and get the first right of refusal. So, I mean, there were some moving parts in trying to get all of this done.
Yep.
And so that's what we've landed, and I think we've landed in a good spot.
Totally respect that. Again, we are where our feet are. I mean, we can coulda, woulda, shoulda, lots of different aspects. Staff is, again, as this is ramped up and the conversation's ramped up, this is just when we've decided to have it. There's lots of conversations I wish I would have had 6 months ago on lots of projects. So you guys got stuff going on. You got stuff going on tonight. You got everything else. So totally, again, understand and respect that. Your staff has been responsive to us, trying to get answers to your questions. We're happy to work with them. And I understand the challenges of this form of government that make those things harder to move as quickly, perhaps, because, like you said, you got to be talking about it in here. So we're certainly at the ready to do that. But I will say publicly as well, there is an end time to this. I mean, this cannot be.
I was going to ask you, when is that?
Adam, do you want to, on the donation agreement side, do you want to give a timeline, perhaps?
And Mike, I started with Baptist at 3 buildings. We landed with 2, but Casey's here. Maybe we get 3 buildings out the deal. I mean, we'll keep negotiating.
They have 920, no, I'm just saying.
Exactly. There you go.
Go ahead, sir.
So if I understand right, just the timeline on the current donation agreement is what we're looking for?
Yeah, when's the drop dead date?
So we are scheduled with a tentative closing date at the end of July right now. There is one more option to extend for another 60 days, putting us at the end of September. So that's
30 September, okay.
as
All right.
drafted, that is the drop dead date. I can't speak to our drop dead date, how that corresponds, frankly, to the state funds, because that's another component of it.
Well, I can speak to that, because I asked Representative Andrade, and he said that he would allow another year for the agreement to happen. So he told me that verbally. I don't think I'm saying anything that he wouldn't say. So he told me that. I believe that's the case. So.
Do we know when this is going to come back to us for a vote? Is there an anticipation?
Well, today's not a vote, so I'll summarize that at the end if you want, what I think we should do. Commissioner, may you have another comment?
No, Adam, so you're saying that we have to the end of July? I mean, do you think that we can get something with Allison crafted up, particularly with you guys are removing for first right of refusal, getting those buildings included in the next, the 2 buildings are kind of drawn up?
Absolutely. That's an easy change to our existing land donation agreement. And frankly, I think from our perspective, it would essentially be dropping our right of first offer from those couple buildings. Any other questions for me?
No, appreciate it.
Mayor, you got a comment?
One other timeline aspect of that, as you guys know, and again, part of the challenge of this project, spinning all these plates, is that we have a demo price And those don't last forever. I wish all of our construction project prices lasted forever. Your staff knows, you guys know. So I believe the wording is still vague now because we're going to go into negotiation. But what we said in the RP is that it would begin in the fall. So that still aligns with that. But I just want, again, for the record, us to be aware that that's yet another plate to spin is state money. You've addressed donation agreement that the city has a sole contingency to close or not close if the county doesn't fund. And that's, we were not presumptive that, we did not put ourselves in a corner that we are required to do that. We just wouldn't close if that's what would happen. So, and then we have the demo price. So I just want that also to be considered in terms of when we're going to try to get something done. Thanks.
Okay.
And Mr. And I appreciate that. DC, for me, it's a win. If we do what we said we've done, if we're going to deliver health care, we keep health care, health access in that neighborhood, and we keep food, that's a win. And to me, however the negotiations go, when we do those two priorities, it's a win. And I think we can instantly, if Baptist does what they're going to do, we do what we're going to do in the city, we can instantly give these people health care, give these constituents food and an opportunity. There's not a restaurant in walking distance of that place.
Right.
It's not one, and quite frankly, people say, well, they can go over to Palafox. Well, when you got 4 children and you're walking and the bus is not running on a Sunday, that's a pretty long walk.
Yeah.
And CA-wise is closed. So, I mean, it's critical. And sometimes the performance doesn't make sense, but the heart makes sense. And the heart is to give back to that community.
And we have the $5 million that can go to commercial revitalization on the south side of Marino Street, to the demo. Remember, there's a behavioral health building there. That's obviously not the size of this one, but it's a significant demolition. $9.5 million. I know we've worked with you on with Fricker Center going in. Alice Williams is going to be under construction, and that's going to be back. Hopefully, it's some type of child care. So lots of things happening that cities putting some time and heart and money into in and around there. So,
and
thank you for your
Mr.
support.
Chairman, that's what I mean, creativity. And Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it. If we have those buildings, they have money for commercial buildings. There's an opportunity. Well, quite frankly, may not be any money out of our pocket. We get those buildings from Baptist. He has money on the commercial that we can renovate those buildings. It's kind of a win-win. It wouldn't be any money out of our pocket, so to speak. I mean, we'd have to figure out the $2 million, but it'd be an opportunity that we could do, and our health partners would have to participate. I mean, it literally could be, if we just take a few moments and breathe, I think this can be something that can be a win for everybody. Okay. And it's not a demo project. I'm going to go back, and I'm with you, Commissioner.
Well, it has to be demoed to move forward. I'm not going to be naive to know that the building has to come down to move forward.
Yeah.
So, all right. Is there any further comment from the city? Casey, I want to thank you for taking some punches today, but it doesn't mean we don't love you. The board, Commissioner, you have your line, anything else?
No.
Okay.
Just want to thank you for your
I knew
time.
it.
That's all.
No, no.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, guys.
You and
I
Lumen
appreciate
are
it.
fighting for a word count today. No, come on. Thank you, Mayor.
I feel like I'm in a city council meeting.
Yeah. I think in closure, Baptist, the city, and us need to go back, look under the car seats, flip the couch over, and look at how we can help on this project. I think it's clear that a few of us on the board have problems with general fund, and I think that's a legitimate complaint. Doesn't say we're not going to try to get to something. I'm committed to that. I would ask the city to, hopefully we have an equitable distribution on this thing. I felt the discussion was healthy. I feel like, I know sometimes people look at this and say, oh my gosh, the board's beating people up. We don't really have another option other than this setting, and I think that people need to understand. It's not that we're trying to attack anyone. I'd love to go and tell these guys separately what I thought about it. You can't do that, and I think a lot of citizens just don't realize that. But as far as this, I appreciate everyone coming today. This was an informational brief for the record. I told the mayor yesterday there was no intention of me at putting this on the agenda tonight because I knew that there would be much more discussion that needed to happen. I did commit to the mayor that we would put in the future, on a probably July meeting, to have a discussion with us to see what we believe is the right fit.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I gave the mayor my commitment that I was going to bring this for an action item. I will respect tonight, and it's good that we're not going to do that. But I hope that we will get that questions answered and become creative on how do we get it. I mean, I know Adam can get an extension, but at some point, I'd like to bring it back for a vote.
Well, I told him I would. Every time I said, but I just didn't think it was right for the citizens.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
And I think it was healthy, and I know exactly what you're saying. You made some very valid points.
Okay.
I mean, you should have made those votes when you were on the health authority there. You could have,
Oh, I did. Why do you think I did? Trust me. All right. Thank you, everyone. This concludes this meeting.